I've clicked onto the Global Tropical overview for February the 7th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the thought expression are mine alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to their local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we've got several systems active across the South Pacific today. That's really where we're going to be focused over the next few days as these systems progress. But you can see a lot of thunderstorm activity continuing across the South Pacific. And unlike my last video where we had this big trough of just a disturbed thunderstorm activity, we've had some of those portions of the trough break off. We've had a couple tropical cyclones form from that. We have this one here. This is near American Samoa, and this is Tropical Cyclone 11 by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Its designation is number 8 by the Fiji Meteorological Service, but same storm, same impacts, and the system will be continuing southeastwards and will bring some impacts to the islands of American Samoa and Samoa over the next several hours throughout the course of the day. We also have the other part of this that I believe did break away from that trough is Tropical Cyclone Nat. It's off your screen, and it's near the French Polynesian Islands and impacting those islands there, and is a tropical cyclone. And I'll talk about that at the end of the video. But that's not our only two systems. We've still got Invest 94P way west here near New Caledonia. This system last week came off of Australia and it's just meandered in the Coral Sea for the past several days. And now we're going to see at least some movement from the system towards New Caledonia. And I'll talk about that after we go through 11P. So let's go into that one first. This is the close-in visible loop of Tropical Cyclone 11, 8 if you want to call it by Fiji Meteorological Service standards. You can see the deep convection continuously sustaining, being more organized over what appears to be the low-level center. You can sort of tell that if you look at the low-level clouds. At the latter half of the loop, you see more southerly winds. Here on the western side, there's a bit of a hint of maybe some northwesterly winds here, and you get a general sense of an area of low pressure between those two flows. And we did have, I believe, some high passes or ASCAT passes that had confirmed an area of low pressure here. And there also might be some radar data that I don't exactly know how to access from American Samoa. Now, this system is pretty weak right now. It just formed, and it's probably about 35, 40 miles per hour in terms of winds, and it's not likely to get too strong. We may see some intensification. You can sort of see the outline of a big upper low to the south of Fiji in the upper level cirrus. It's much better seen in the water vapor loop. You can see that just this flow here turning from more southwest to northwest here south of the storm. This is providing a good divergent flow south of the storm to where all these cloud elements are accelerating away from the storm and helping to contribute to a good poleward outflow channel. And this is what's likely helped it develop into a tropical cyclone. This may help it become maybe a little bit stronger. Maybe we could see this system get a little more strong. But overall, I would not anticipate the system to get overly strong, as once it gets southeast, it's going to likely slow down because there's going to be a ridge building to the south and blocking it. And once it gets down here in this flow and it's stalled, it's going to be facing upper level winds of 30 to 40 knots, maybe in some cases upwards of 50 knots. So very strong flow, and that will likely keep the storm pretty weak. You can see that here on the GFS. I'll go to the beginning of this, and you can see the trough here, associated with the upper level low, and all the divergence southeast of the storm. And as it goes southeast, you'll notice it does intensify a little bit on the model because it is in line with this flow. It's tracking at a fairly steady speed, similar to that of the winds aloft. But as we go into Thursday, you'll note that the storm slows down, and it actually starts tracking more westerly, more southwesterly on this run, and it starts weakening because now you've got the storm tracking southwest and all this strong flow aloft crossing over it, and that is just going to shear all the thunderstorms off of it. You can see why this happens. If we look at the GFS 850 millibar flow, you'll see that while aloft we have this big upper trough trying to push it towards the southeast, down towards the surface, we have this ridge building, and this is going to be a similar story with Invest 94P further west, and this is just going to block it so that the system just starts turning west, and you can see the shear, some of the magnitude of it, if I get a sounding from the GFS. What you'll see here is a couple things. You'll see the flow from the ridge down south. This is trying to push it there. And all of the strong winds, like I said, in some cases upwards of 50 knots, shearing away the thunderstorm activity from the storm. And as that happens, the storm is going to weaken, and it will likely just meander around this region for a few days after that. May it have some chance to redevelop at a later time? Maybe, but GFS is really not saying too much, and I really have not seen too much on the models in terms of redevelopment after this shearing. That will likely be, at least for now, it will likely be the end of Tropical Cyclone 11. But while it is still around, we could still see some impacts across American Samoa and Samoa. We could have heavy rainfall, strong gusty winds up to tropical storm force, and maybe some higher surf along the immediate coastline. This is a forecast cone from the Fiji Meteorological Service, and you can see them keeping this tracking southeast and becoming a tropical cyclone tomorrow. Maybe just its last chance to become a tropical cyclone, actually on this map, and then remaining a tropical cyclone throughout the rest of the forecast, though I'd be more inclined to believe that the system would be getting sheared and losing tropical cyclone status by the end of this forecast, just given the impacts that I told you about with the shear not too long ago. This is the Weather Forecast Office from American Samoa from the National Weather Service. You can see we do have a flash flood warning over the island, but in terms of wind, they're not going tropical storm warning, it doesn't look like. We're going to see a high wind warning in place for the island, which I believe that might be for higher elevations. I'm not entirely sure. It's a bit hard to tell on this map, but you can see some alerts there for wind. In fact, we have a wind advisory that might be for the lower elevations as the storm comes through. So stay safe in American Samoa. And Samoa, we're now going to move to the Invest that we've been talking about, well, that we talked about a week ago. This is Invest 94P, and just to get a sense of where we are, this is New Caledonia on the southeastern part of this loop, and the storm is once again just sitting here. It really sat northwest of New Caledonia for the past week, and you can already see some of the struggles that the system is going to be having over the next few days to become a tropical cyclone. You can see that there's just a lack of thunderstorm activity to the south of the storm, and we sort of have this little insert here on the northeastern side of the low where there's not really much thunderstorm activity. If we go to the water vapor loop, this reveals what that is, and it's just a lot of dry air surrounding it. We talked about in my last video how this system would be continuously surrounded by a lot of dry air, and it's really showing here. We've got this tongue of dry air just continuously wrapped around the storm, and that little inset that I noted on visible is attributed by that dry air. Now, there isn't very strong shear right now. You'll note I'm going to go a little bit slower on it so we don't have those jumping frames, so you can see this more clearly. There's not a lot of strong winds cutting across your screen. There might be a little hint of southwesterly shear here, as you can see just a couple cloud elements get sheared off towards the northeast. So that might be a little bit of shear on the system, and that might cause the system to struggle at least a little bit as the system tries to develop into a storm. Now, aside from the convective issues, you can see that the circulation looks decent. It's not overly well defined, but it does look closed and compact enough. And I'd say that if the system was able to get deep convection sustaining over the center for long enough, we could see a designation as a tropical cyclone here, and that would probably meet the criteria for a tropical storm. Now, something that will go in its favor is we have another upper low south of New Caledonia, and this is going to progress a little bit further west and northwest over the coming days. You can see that here on the model, and what this is going to do, similarly to how this big upper low is helping Tropical Cyclone 11 right now with outflow, this is going to help it a little bit. You can see more of a outflow channel open up to the south of the storm, and this may be the missing ingredient that it needs to become a tropical cyclone. You can see right now we do have some sense of outflow. We have some cloud elements moving toward the southeast here over New Caledonia, but it's not very strong right now. It doesn't really have a well-defined poleward or equatorward outflow channel, and this would likely open up that poleward outflow channel a little bit more, and that could help the system to become a tropical cyclone. Now, having said that, we do still have all this dry air around, and models have continuously showed that while the system might be a tropical cyclone on their runs, it is continuously getting dry air intrusions into the center, and that will likely keep it from intensifying all too much. We're likely just going to see this remain a tropical storm over the next few days. Now, this evolution is going to seem very familiar. The system is going to track southeast because of this upper level low, and you can see that on the GFS, and it intensifies a little bit on the run, down to 985 on the red L there near New Caledonia. But you can see as we get towards the weekend, the storm starts to slow down as it gets to New Caledonia, and we start to see rapid weakening take place. Very similar to Tropical Cyclone 11, a ridge is building to the south of the storm. So you can see on the model how the storm comes southeast, and then by the weekend, we have this ridge building to the south. And this is going to try once again to push the system towards the northwest, and it's going to slow the system down. And with all this strong flow aloft, you can see that in the blue coloring here over the storm, that is going to shear the system very significantly. And a lot of models are showing the system losing tropical cyclone status, or at least being very close to losing it, as it again heads northwest to where it is right now. Could it eventually, after this, go somewhere else and be a tropical cyclone impact at another time? It is possible, but I won't go into that much right now because this is nearly a week plus out. So we'll talk about that possibility in the future if we need to. As of right now, the Mateo, New Caledonia office has a medium chance for the system to become a tropical cyclone. I'd probably give it about medium to high odds of development. Now, again, like I said, intensification is not really likely here. We're not likely to see too much intensification. Could it get to maybe a mid-grade tropical storm? That is certainly within the realm of possibility here. But the main impact for New Caledonia is going to be heavy rainfall and gusty winds and maybe some higher surf conditions, similarly to Samoa with Tropical Cyclone 11. All right, we're now going to move east, and we're going to go to Tropical Cyclone Nat here, and I'm going to zoom out so you can sort of get a gauge on where we are. We're in the middle of the Pacific right now, and this is the French Polynesian Islands. Just off your screen here to the west, that is Tropical Cyclone 11, where Samoa is. Now, you can already tell Nat is not doing too well right now across the Pacific. You can see right now, just on this frozen frame, the center is pretty obvious here, and not really a lot of convection going off around it. If we look at the water vapor loop, we have quite a bit of shear coming right into the backside of the storm. You can see a lot of these upper level winds, or upper level clouds rather, pushing right into the storm. And what this is doing is just shearing apart the thunderstorm activity. So you can see in the beginning of this loop, it had more convection over it, but over the course of the morning hours, all of that convection really has just gotten sucked away, or pushed away rather, from the storm. And this is really going to keep Nat weak as well, and really I don't anticipate too much intensification on this one either. Now, I'm not really going to be talking about models on this one, as this one's pretty far south of the islands, and this is just going to continue on the southeasterly track like it is right now. You can see the forecast from the Fiji Meteorological Service keeps this a Cat 2 south of the French Polynesian Islands. That might be a little bit aggressive, just given the current trends we're seeing on satellite, but it is certainly a possibility, and it is certainly something to take note of in the French Polynesian Islands as the system passes south. But the good news is the strongest winds in this red bubble here are forecast to stay south of the islands, and really it's just going to be similar to the other two storms. Heavy rainfall, maybe some gusty winds and higher surf conditions across the region. But that's all that we've got for today. Not very strong systems, but they're still bringing impacts to land. And I'll have further uploads over the course of this week as all these systems do progress. I'll probably be mainly talking about 94P after today, given what I talked about with Nat and 11P. But stay safe in all the areas that are going to be affected by all these tropical cyclones. And that's all for now. So thanks for watching.